Hello and welcome to a brand new podcast called The Comedy Slab. I'm Shane O'Connor and he's Adrian Lacey.
Shall I say hello at this point?
I left a little gap for you just to... Did you notice
brilliant.
that? Just so you
I did. I bet people will think I'm just very slow.
You can reverse into there at your leisure. As it's the first one of a brand new podcast, and we'll probably do it every week anyway, let's just explain a little bit what it's about, the rationale behind why we wanted to do this podcast. It's a little bit like on the game show, you know, when they explain the rules to you, how the whole thing works. So feel free to jump in, Adrian, at any point if I get it wrong. Essentially, Adrian and I, we've worked in radio broadcasting for about... It sounds like I'm applying for a job here, doesn't it now? We've worked in radio broadcasting and he's worked in TV, and we both love comedy. And we were sitting down to decide what we were going to do as a podcast, and we just kept coming back to the subject of comedy, didn't we? Because we just love it so much. So we thought, okay, we'll look at a different comedy every week, and we'll cast our critical eye, I suppose. Audio. Yes, yeah, critical audio, in the same way that an audience would. You know, do we approve? Do we not approve? Do we like? What do we like about it? What we don't like about it? And basically, I will choose a comedy one week. And at the end of this first episode, Adrian will choose another comedy for us to go away and do our homework and to listen to, because we're including audio comedy as well, listen to or to watch, and we'll come back the next week and we'll do another critique. That's about it, isn't it? I think that's a fair summation.
I think so, in a nutshell. I think I don't understand why it's got this label, but apparently that's high concept, isn't it? Which sounds really grand and highfalutin, but actually high concept means a very straightforward conceit or idea.
Yeah, I think, and that's why we the reason we came to the name Comedy Slab, because we thought, well, every week we'll get a comedy on the slab, dissect it, have a look at it up and down a bit, and let you know what we think. And I mean, the idea is, of course, hopefully recommend it to people. So maybe, and I think this is what's going to happen. You know, I think because we both love comedy, but the more we talk about comedy, the more I realise there are things that you like that I've not come across, and vice versa. And so I'm quite looking forward to that whole concept of, you know, you go, right, this next week we're going to do this. I go, I've never heard this before at all. So that's going to be quite an enjoyable part of it as well. So we tossed a metaphorical coin, and I won. And I got to choose a comedy, and I thought I would start off in that vein and choose one that I was surprised to say you hadn't come across this. It's an American comedy, although I suppose you could call it a transatlantic comedy, because we'll explain a little bit more about the makers behind this series, called Veep, which you'd never. I mean, you were aware of, but you've never actually sat down and said, right, okay, I'm going to watch an episode of this, had you?
Yes, a lot of people listening will know it's Armando Iannucci, the comedy genius in a lot of people's view, including mine. Behind it, the man who brought us Alan Partridge and, well, going way back when to Friday Night Armistice, all sorts of things. And it really is, it's an Americanization, correct me if I'm wrong, of the thick of it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's making any attempt to cover up on that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I think, but it's very definitely an American infused version of the British political satire, the thick of it.
Which is quite interesting in itself, isn't it, really, if you think about it? Because you're right, it is. I mean, they made the thick of it, and then they made... they went across the States and they made Veep, and the reason it's called Veep, for the people who've not picked up on it, it's about a vice president, and that's they call the vice president the VP, and that gets I was going to say shortened, but it isn't the VP. Veep is longer, is it? It's more letters. I don't know.
No, but I was just thinking they did the same with the car model Jeep, which comes from GP. Did you know the story?
Isn't it General
Purpose?
Purpose. That's it. Yeah, GP. Yeah, Jeep. So that's where Veep. But the interesting thing I thought, can you imagine them doing Yes Minister American style-y? Or did they do American style-y Yes Minister? I don't think they did. Did they?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'm not aware. But I'm probably going to be found out in this series of podcasts. Passionate though I am about comedy, you will find more holes in my comedy knowledge than in Emmental cheese
but
that's been half eaten by a mouse.
We'll fill them in, won't we? We'll fill them in. But that's the whole point. It's not a test, is it? It's not. Although there will be a quiz at the end.
And if it is a test, you win.
And if you fail, then you have to give me 50 quid or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't in the contract.
No. This isn't the point, is it? It's, to say, all right, okay, who knows more about comedy? But as far as I'm aware, but then when I said it, I thought, I wonder if they had actually, because, you kind of think, well, I wonder, did they do that? But can you imagine Yes Minister translating across? Although I think it's easier now to do a transatlantic translation than it was in the 70s, maybe. Don't you think the cultures were very much further apart then?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, how would you... I wouldn't even know how you might satirise or find the equivalent of the civil service, British civil service, as it was sent up on Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister.
Yeah,
it is. We have converged more over the years, it seems, culturally.
Yeah. But Veep, anyway, as you rightly say, Armando Iannucci said, right, okay, let's take it across to the States and we'll do a thick of it. I was going to say warts and all, but it's probably sweary and all. It is very
sweary Mary and all.
It is very sweary, isn't it? So if you're not into naughty language, then it's probably not going to be for you. In fact, if you're quite politically correct, it's probably not for you as well, because it's. I don't know if you picked up from. We watched the first episode of the first series, didn't we? Although I've actually seen all. However many, I can't remember how many series there are. About 7, I think, something like that.
Have you seen every episode? Are you a completist?
I'm a bit sad like that. No, sorry, there aren't that many. There's 6 series, although there's 10 in a series. So, I've seen all of them. I was a bit of an addict to this at one stage. Actually, I must, the old binging on the box set kind of stuff like that. But yeah, it isn't particularly politically correct, is it?
It would be correct to say it isn't.
I mean, in terms of where you come from with this, it's like you say about how would you translate the British Civil Service. I came to this, and I love the United States. I've been quite a few times. I've been to Washington as well, and some of the shots around Washington. In fact, I told you, didn't I saw Obama in Washington.
You were impressed by the size of his cavalcade.
Oh, we had a whopper, you certainly did. And
it's not called the Beast for nothing, is it? The presidential car,
armoured
which
vehicles.
There are actually 2.
Well, yeah, because there's 2, isn't there? Because there's a decoy one.
The spare.
You never know which one he's in. Although when he wound the window down and waved out of it, it kind of gives it away, really.
Well, how do you know that's not an actor?
Oh, I've never thought of that. Yeah, it could be a double, couldn't it? Really, but. Not really, despite loving the United States and the whole sort of Washington thing is quite breathtaking as well. I didn't really know an awful lot about US politics, so when I first saw that they were doing this, I thought, I really like Armando Iannucci, I really like his work, but I'm not really sure that I'm going to get it. It doesn't seem to matter, does it? Do you think? It doesn't seem to. It seems that politics is a dirty business the world over.
Well, yeah, furthermore, people are people wherever they are. So even if you work in an office, nothing to do with politics anywhere, you will see traits that you recognise from work. You could build roads or fly aircraft, and you would see things you recognise because it's astutely observed of the human animal, isn't it? The way. The old phrase, all power corrupts and all of that. And it can corrupt anywhere. People get their mates in, people side with the boss because you have to for survival. So, I think it's very universal. So, I agree with you on that. Brutal,
though, don't you think? Quite. I mean, I was making notes because I'd never really sort of sat down and critiqued it as a series, despite hugely enjoying it. But I can't. When you start to look and you analyse it, you realise how brutal it is, how brutal they are with each other. The people. I mean, it's talk about, well, to quote an episode of Yes Minister, the greasy pole. They're all trying to one up each other, and trying to sort of get the better of their colleagues so that they get into pole position and they get a better job or they move department. Or it's very Machiavellian, but it's very dark. Do you find it dark despite the humour?
Oh yeah, maybe it's the opposite of that song, accentuate the positive. I often find myself accentuating the negative, and as someone said to me once, there's a lot of despair in comedy, and if you scratch beneath the surface of even the lightest thing, and I was listening to an interview with Frank Oz, who a lot of people will know. The Muppet Show, yeah. Frank Oz, voice of Miss Piggy, and you probably know other characters as well that I can't think of.
Fozzie Bear, I think Frank Oz did, didn't he, as well? I think.
Fozzie, yeah. Well, good job it was him and not me with that impersonation.
Oh, it was quite good.
But anyway, it's almost as if he's in the room with me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get out, Fozzie. Anyway, what I nearly said Fozzie, he said. Frank Oz. You see, it's Foz, isn't it? Frank Oz. Foz.
That's probably what it was, wasn't it? Fozzie, yeah, Frank Oz.
Yeah, that might be his nickname, for all we know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said to have true comedy, this is paraphrasing, but, comedy with real bite that really convinces, you've got to have, your characters have got to have an underlying tragedy. He listed the tragic side of Miss Piggy, which is she loves Kermit, but she can never be with him. She's a pig, he's a frog. There are mixed relationships, but that's crossing the species line, so that's probably not going to happen. So she's not quite comfortable with her looks. She's always trying to seduce whoever is interviewing her. That never comes off, etc., etc. So even in something that's apparently light and for kids, it wasn't for kids. Anyone on the Muppet Show would tell you, first and foremost, it's for adults. And by the way, if we got some children watching, well, that was just a bonus, and so on and so forth. But yeah, the underlying tragedy is under the bonnet, as it were, of any classy comedy that we could name.
It's that word for me though with Veep was brutality, and that's. It was the thick of it was like that as well, wasn't it? Which I'm sure we'll do. I won't go too deeply into because we'll do it another date. But the thick of it was, you were watching at times, and a lot of times, a personification of workplace bullying.
Essentially, yeah.
And you kind of think and I think Armando Iannucci is really good at this. It's this kind of discomfort. They used to do this with Partridge. A lot of Alan Partridge was about discomfort, wasn't it? You kind of felt uncomfortable.
Just a bit.
Because he got into this kind of situation, and you think, oh my God, what's he going to do? How's he going to get out of this? Or, you'd feel his discomfort as okay, stop now. It's that kind of thing.
Or worse still, you identified with it, unless that's just me. I'm the only person that thinks, actually, I'm not so many safe million miles away from Mr. Partridge.
I think
myself.
It's fair. Anyone who's worked in radio feels like that at some point in their life, don't they?
When I was doing live shows, we met, we should say very briefly, at BBC Radio Derby.
We met over a crowded microphone.
Yeah, we did. Crowded studio. And you looked lovingly through the glass. I could actually see you through the glass because we had two adjacent studios with a middle studio. Anyway,
that's right. Yeah.
And we had the intercom between them as well. I remember you being... Talk about cruelty.
So you could say we had intercourse between them then. Sorry, yes, go on.
It was social intercourse, maybe. Wouldn't put it any more strongly than that. I remember you were counting down the minutes till I was due to do my first show. And I'd never done a show on proper airwaves out in the real world. I'd done a show on university radio years before. Anyway, where was I going with this wretched story? This is what I do.
I'm sorry. Was I counting down on air?
No, off air. You were on air at the time.
Oh, right.
But while the record was playing, you were saying, 5 minutes and counting. Or words to that. And I thought...
a knob.
I thought that... Just what I need when I'm trying to manage my anxiety. Anyway, I've forgotten why I started that anecdote. What was I going to... Oh, yes, I would allow myself... Every show, I would allow myself 2 Partridgeisms tops. I kind of resigned myself to the fact there would be a Partridgeism or 2 in a show. I thought, I can't go for 0 Partridgeisms. It's just... Yeah. So I kind of bought myself some space to do that and to allow myself to be... very imperfect, like Alan himself.
But that's the thing, isn't it? And I think if you get hung up on it, that's when it becomes a problem. It's if you can not enjoy it, but if you can relax into that kind of discomfort, then that's when other good things happen. That's where the good comedy comes out of this. Do you know what's quite interesting as well? Watching the first episode again after going through all 6 series. is how underdeveloped the characters are. You really are getting in the first episode an introduction to the characters, and they're quite a meek and I've got to tell you this. I don't know if you're going to watch any more of it or whether
I'd
you're
like to, yeah.
Whether you but that they are quite a mild version of their selves as they develop as the series goes on. I got to tell you, good to because I thought this is quite lightweight compared to how bad it gets.
and I'm thinking, blimey, this is really heavyweight for episode 1.
Yeah, it's quite full on, really, but lightweight in context of the whole series.
And the word that came to me was another C word that we can say, cruel.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've said brutal. It's a very similar idea, really. That it doesn't pull its punches, and if you dare to show any cracks in your psychic makeup, they are going to find them.
The interesting thing with it as well is that there is a believability about it, Adrian, isn't there? Don't you think? You don't sit there for a minute thinking, well, I'm sure politics isn't really like this. For every moment you're watching, you think, yes, I fully understand and believe that this is how I expect it, and I suppose it is, isn't it? I guess that's how politics is. Well,
I have the I nearly said misfortune. I have the good fortune to work with politicians, albeit not in a political environment, but working as I do in broadcasting in another life away from this podcast. Okay, they're not going to show me the cut and thrust of, the kind of thing you see in Veep, but what I see of it is I can imagine it and is consistent with it. Let's put it that way.
Right. I mean, that's and again, through the thick of it, you never at any point, however far-fetched it gets, you never think, oh, this is just ridiculous now. They wouldn't be that nasty. You kind of think there is a inherent believability in there that, they probably would. The thing that shocked me, and I think it still shocks me now, and I guess it's deliberate in a way because the lead character, the vice president, is female. Which, if not anyone who's not seen it, the character is Selina Meyer, played by the wonderful Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who I'm led to believe he's so stupendously rich that she doesn't actually need to work, and she became an actress just because she fancies it.
Her dad was a billionaire.
That's it. Yeah.
So yeah, I have to say I'm liking her for different reasons apart from her wealth. Forgive my straight male hormones, but she is rather lovely.
She's hugely watchable as well, though. She is unbelievable.
Actor, yeah.
You couldn't just cast any. I mean, this is what's clever about it, I think, as well. Is they're a great ensemble cast. I mean, for me, there are some standout guys, like the guy who plays Jonah Ryan, who's an actor called Timothy Simmons, who is, I think, deserves an honourable mention. And there's a guy who. He came in later, I think. He came in the second series. A character Kent Davison, who's played by Gary Cole, who is also. But they're all pretty fabulous actors. But they're all believable, aren't they? In their roles, like Mike McClintock, the press officer. You don't think, oh, he wouldn't be anything like that. He's you think, yeah, you could meet him anywhere in the halls of power.
Or indeed, you have already met him in some form or other. I mean, my eccentric family. We've got. Example of everything, I'm no exception of being some kind of eccentric as well. But utterly solid. You don't think, oh, this is an actor playing this character.
No,
you can't imagine them being anything else. Really.
The point I was going to make though is that you have a female vice president, and there are some key female characters in there who are equally, if not more, brutal and grabbing than the male characters.
Well, I think what has traditionally been a male-dominated profession, as so many professions have been, certainly in the past, if not the present, women become more bloke-like, don't they? Or the men who will often do the recruiting are choosing people. Well, it's the old cliche: you choose people who look like you. Well, if they don't look like you, if they happen to be the opposite gender, then they're going to act like you, or more likely to. So yes, I mean It reminds me of the spitting image where Mrs. Thatcher goes to the urinal next to the other male members of the cabinet. You can see Selina doing the same thing, can't you?
Yeah. But that's the thing. But in a way, you kind of expect that the female characters will be. Well, I did anyway. I thought that they would be brutal in a feminine way. But you're right. They do try. They become. It almost becomes homogenous, doesn't it? There's like because of the fact that they're all fighting in the same pool, and it doesn't matter whether they're male or female.
Oh yeah, if you had the script and you covered up the left-hand column with the character names, I would defy you to say, "Oh, that's a nice, gentle, womanly line."
Yeah.
The likelihood is that's Mike McClintock.
Yeah.
If you're looking at that.
But that's the thing. You know, the reason that the whole thing works is because it is. That's how real life is, isn't it? You know, you wouldn't expect that. Oh, well, okay, women will say this kind of thing and men will say that kind of thing. In that situation, human beings react in pretty much the same way, I guess. Just to illustrate that point, just another quick clip of. That kind of. I'll keep using the word brutality. Maybe they're just being forthright with each other. I don't know. Perhaps I'm getting old.
Or should I open up my thesaurus?
Yeah.
Give you some alternatives.
Yeah.
I would say, having had some moments to think about it, it's very savage, bloodthirsty, vicious, ferocious, barbaric, barbarous, wicked, murderous, cold-blooded, hard-hearted, harsh. Do you get the idea? I've had time to open my thesaurus.
I was 18 before I realised that. I thought, gosh, he's got such a wonderful command of the English language. Yeah.
If only. I struggle with my own language, never mind any others.
As I put this forward, I feel duty-bound in a way to ask you, Did you enjoy it? How did you come away feeling? Did you enjoy it?
There's a bit of looking through your fingers about it, which does relate to whichever of those words you want to choose, meaning cruelty or barbarity and so on. I demand a lot of comedy, and I demand contradictory things which can't possibly be delivered by anyone, or certainly not by mere mortals. And actually, I don't count Armando Iannucci as a mere mortal. I think he's superior to most beings that walk the earth. I remember him saying in an interview once, that's what I wanted to raise here. He said the thing about comedy is it's not obliged to come up with an answer. And I almost wanted it to come up with the answer. How are we ever going to have clean politics? And you may find the very idea of that comedic in itself. Get over it. It's a half-hour sitcom. Enjoy it for what it is. I do find that the humour of cruelty, I've probably got mixed feelings about that as well. I can find it hard work. And then, of course, you do get sucked into it. Just as you imagine good people are sucked into doing bad things in politics. It's rather interesting, especially in the light of the hashtag Me Too times we now live in. There's a reference to, is this too much of a spoiler? I suppose we're always going to issue some kind of spoiler, aren't we, on this show? Otherwise we can't talk about the show at all.
In fairness, it is only episode 1 of the first series. So, I mean, you've got another 6 series to have a good old chunk at if you want to go and look at it. It's not going to ruin too much, is it?
No, fair dues. Well, anyway, a bad guy dies, a bad politician, and if I tell you his nickname is Rapey Reeves, we know we're very much on the dark side, or he is on the dark side. And it's interesting because I think this was made around 2012, so predates the alleged scandal, as we must still say about Harvey Weinstein and so on. But I'm pretty sure that sort of thing could still go on, the way people close in around him. Because at the end of the day, we're tribal creatures, and politicians, although notionally they might be members of different parties, or some bad, some good, there is that pack hunt instinct, especially when you're hunted from the outside by the press, and everyone on the planet, it seems, hates you. So you're going to stick together. And basically they're covering up this guy's evil past.
Yeah. You see all that.
So that's hard viewing.
There was a humanity to that with me, though, because it struck a chord because I knew somebody who I was going to say his nickname, but it wasn't his nickname. People used to call him Rapey Dave.
Because I shouldn't laugh. You see, I feel guilty afterwards.
But because he was, they thought he was a bit sleazy.
Right.
He hadn't served a sentence, as far as I'm aware, or been convicted of it. But that was the kind of black humour that those people used to talk. So it kind of struck a chord in me. But the wonderful thing about that, I thought, was the context of it all, because this guy had died a slow, lingering death, hadn't he? He'd been in intensive care.
He had more tubes going into him than he looked like a set of bagpipes. Sorry to interrupt.
But it was, they said Senator Reeves has died, and they all went, ah. And then there was a brief pause, and then Selina Meyer, the vice president, said, Rapey Reeves. And it was
it's almost like a term of affection.
Of endearment.
That's dark.
And you're right. I mean, there is a darkness to it. So you wouldn't say you enjoyed it then? You wouldn't come away and go, I mean, if you watched that as a pilot on TV, sat down one night, would you tune in next week, Adrian? That's the question.
Oh, that's the thing is, I don't watch an awful lot of TV, and I think that comes from 13 years of working as a sound engineer in TV. I think it's a bit like they say, if you could see what went on in an abattoir, you wouldn't eat a sausage. Yeah. I happen not to eat meat, as has been discussed elsewhere between us. But the thing is, I know how TV is made, and so I'm incredibly fussy about it. I think if I watched it, the motivation would be the incredibly crisp writing. And we must mention, I mean, Armando Iannucci, what an all-rounder, but also Simon Blackwell.
Simon Blackwell,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, who's written, I mean, I looked at his biog, it's pretty impressive. And to go head-to-head with Iannucci is quite impressive of anyone to dare to do. But, I mean, he wrote or co-wrote Peep Show, which I thought was brilliant.
I think he also gets the English comedian, not to be mistaken with the American rapper Will Smith, in a bit later on, and he writes some of the stuff as well, because I think in order to freshen it up and to make sure it's not too samey. But come on, you're sitting on the fence. Would you tune in next week? Yes or no?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay. That's
because of the quality of the writing, I think. But everything comes together, doesn't it, in a good show? Yeah. Writing, performance, the technical side, everything.
Well, that's time's beaten us. Actually, we've run out of time for Veep for this week. Now, all that remains is for you to set the homework for next week, doesn't it? We've got to decide what we're gonna put on the slab for next week. Then,
well, indeed, and this is a discovery I made. One of those happy, not quite coincidences, but just a random thing. Tuning in to my BBC Radio app, and that's quite significant because you will only find it, and it might help to be in the UK, thinking of geolocations, but I think you probably find it on the web. You have to go via different routes. Certainly it's on iPlayer. Series 2, Series 1 is not currently available, of, the comedian is Colin Hoult, that's Hoult, and I just chanced across on, I think it was BBC Radio 4 Extra, which is a kind of archive speech radio show, and just one night I was listening, and the Carnival of Monsters came on, which is his series, or it's Colin Holt's Carnival of Monsters. You're laughing because I think you might be thinking of a certain catchphrase that between us we've adopted off air.
No, it was I just think it's a wonderful title, Carnival of Monsters. I just think it's because it's a sketch show, isn't it? It's like a kind of
but it's so well dressed up, you don't know that you're actually I didn't even because the conceit of the carnival, you're in this very sort of dark gothic circus tent, or that's how I see it. That's the magic of radio, of course. The pictures are in your mind, and it's so well presented like that. He can do the most ordinary thing, and I didn't even think of it as a sketch till you said. I just think of it as an act coming on stage and then going off.
But this is for next week. We're ruining next week's one.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. So, enough said.
So, Carnival of Monsters. By the way, if you think, actually, I'd like to try Veep, want to try and get a hold of it. Now TV, I think, you can see the whole lot. You'd have to subscribe to them if you want to catch it up. It's probably on You can get it on Amazon as well. I think if you've got an Amazon, is it Amazon Fire Stick or something like that? You can get those. You can see the back series as well.
Or the bloke who drives the ice cream van down my way. If you knock on the back door, you might have a dodgy knockoff.
Might do my VHS cassette for you. That's it then for this edition of Comedy Slab. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and do all those wonderful things so that it makes it worth our while for us to come back next week. So next week, Colin Holt, Carnival of Monsters. We'll be catching up with that one. And in the meantime, thanks for listening from me, Shane O'Connor.
And from me, Adrian Lacey. We're on Twitter. We can just say as a footnote, which is, could you follow us on Twitter, which is @Comedy Slab.